didn't really tell you the whole story. I met Tom. He came on the air. I host a show that actually has 3 hosts: me, Heidi Harris, and a guy named Brian Whitman, who's a liberal on the show. And Heidi we mocked because she has somewhat of a crush on Tom. And so Brian, who's a voiceover guy, he does voices among his other talents. He immediately began calling Tom the Italian Prince of California politics, and doing one of his voices while he played love story music underneath, and talking about Tom's going Philly, Maine. And that became a running joke. Thanks so much, Tom, for having me. I also want to thank the Protocols of the Elders of Zion for sponsoring tonight's entire program. Tom called me about, let's see, it would have been about 7 o'clock tonight, and he says, "Where are you?" And I said, "Well, you know, Sabbath just ended. I'm just getting in the car now to come to the event." It was true, Sabbath had just ended, and so I can't drive on Sabbath, I'm Orthodox Jew. So I got in the car and sped my way over here. And then as I was coming in, there was somebody who was protesting the convention. And, you know, the person walked up to me, and they were obviously very liberal, and they were a big fan of our illustrious Governor Jerry Brown. And I said to them, "I don't understand why you're such a fan of Jerry Brown." I said, "Well, you know, I ran into Jerry the other day, and I was really, really excited because I'd been reading all of this great news about the new bullet train, this fantastic bullet train that's going to go from nowhere to nowhere." And so I went up to Governor Brown, and I said, "You know, Governor, when do you think I can actually ride this thing? When is it going to be ready?" And Governor Brown apparently said to him, "You know, why don't you show up this week in 20 years? This week in 20 years." And he said, "Well, will that be a Tuesday or a Wednesday?" And Governor Brown said, "What does it matter whether it's going to be a Tuesday or a Wednesday? I mean, we're talking about 20 years from now." He said, "Well, you know, on Tuesday, that's when Obama says I can finally see my doctor." We now live in a country of fiction, and we live in a state of fiction. This is not the state of California any longer. This is the state of fiction. We have fictional bullet trains that take us to fictional cities because they're bankrupt, that take us to fictional jobs which don't exist, paid for by fictional taxes that are created by fictional businesses that have now moved to Texas. California is in really bad shape, which for Republicans should be a good thing, right? I mean, Democrats have been in control of the state since, you know, before I was born. I was born in '84. We've had a couple of Republican governors since then, but for all intents and purposes, this has been a liberal state for quite a while. In the first decade of this century, California's population grew by only 10%. It's the smallest population growth in state history. The state owes $28 billion to programs that are rated. Not even overall, just that's programs that it actually rated. We owe hundreds of millions of dollars in unfunded pension liabilities. We owe tens of millions of dollars just to the pension funds for all of the teachers. The teachers are paid, according to Bill Bennett, former Secretary of Education, better in this state than they are anywhere else on planet Earth. They're paid about $68,000 a year when you include all their benefits. This was all made possible by our current governor when he was governor before. He's the one who signed into law the bill that stated that public sector unions could unionize and become a massive force in our state, which has obviously taken a tremendous toll on our politics. As I mentioned before, we're building a high-speed bullet train for about $100 billion, which, you know, comes cheap because it's not like we had trains in this country 150 years ago. I like how the Democrats' future looks so much like 1850. Right? I mean, what really says future to me is a train. Also solar energy, because, you know, the sun, it hasn't been around very long, so that's a new form of energy, like that. Wind, brand new. Whenever the Democrats talk about the future, it sounds suspiciously like caveman days. Meanwhile, Jerry Brown is telling us stories about the little engine that could. He saw his State of the State address. He actually did that. In the middle of his State of the State address, he actually started he was talking about the bullet train. And he started talking about the little engine that could. He actually told the whole story. I think I can, I think I can. And then it occurred to Jerry Brown that he can't think, and he got to stop the story. Every city that has gone bankrupt in this state, really bankrupt, is Democrat dominated. San Bernardino, Stockton, Compton is going to go bankrupt soon. So you would think that at a certain point the people of California would learn their lesson. Maybe these people are really horrible at their jobs and we should stop electing them. Instead, the converse seems to have occurred. Instead, it seems as though the worse they do, the more votes they get. The worse a job they do, the worse the state does, the more votes these basket cases get. And so the question becomes, why aren't we winning? Really, why aren't we winning? Right, I mean, this is the same question that we were asking ourselves, November 7th, 2012. We were asking ourselves, how can a president this bad win re-election? How can Democrats this bad win re-election in this state, and not just win re-election, win a massive majority in both houses, win the governorship, pass Prop 30, pass Prop 32, they pass virtually everything they want to pass. How is this possible? Really? And the answer is very simple. These folks are bullies. We all experience it because we all live in California. I've lived in California virtually my entire life. The only time I was out of California is when I was at Harvard for 3 years, which is not an upgrade in terms of liberalism. But in the state of California, what you realize very quickly is that when you talk to liberals, they don't see you as a decent human being. This is not about they have a policy and you have a policy and we're trying to come to the best available conclusion. This is about you're a nasty person because you don't agree with them. And therefore you're morally deficient. This is why, on a broad national scale, Republicans lost the election in 2012. Both candidates actually succeeded in defining their opposition the way they wanted to define their opposition. Barack Obama was defined by Mitt Romney as someone who was basically a nice guy. He was somebody who was a good dad, he was a good family man. He loved the Constitution, he loved the Declaration of Independence. Maybe his interpretation was a bit off, but overall, nice guy, bad president. That was the picture that Romney painted of Barack Obama. And to a large extent, he succeeded in painting that picture of Barack Obama. If you look at the exit polls, most Americans thought that Obama was not a very good president, and they didn't agree with him on policy. Then there's how Barack Obama defined Mitt Romney. Worst guy since Mussolini. Really just a horror show of a human being. Right? Strapped dogs to the tops of cars. Wanted to put y'all back in chains because he was a racist. Had binders full of women, not because he was trying to hire women, but because he was such a sexist that he had to have binders to even know how to pronounce women's names. And he was somebody who specifically fired employees so that 6 or 7 years later their wives would die of cancer because they didn't have health insurance. That's who Mitt Romney was. He was a bad guy. He used tax loopholes to avoid taxes because he hated the poor, and he was a rich elitist who owned a horse in the Olympics, and the whole deal. He was a bad person. And you saw in the exit poll this reflected by a margin of 85 to 15. 85 to 15, when asked which candidate better understands you as a human being, people said Barack Obama, which is unthinkable, because Barack Obama has never met a human being he understands. Really, he's not good with the whole understanding people thing. I mean, this is a man, his favorite human being is him. But he was painted as somebody who's sympathetic. And this bully tactic, that's what it is. State thug tactic has been used by Democrats across the board on virtually every issue. You see it used on the gun issue. If you don't follow their gun policies, it's not because you think there's a better way to protect kids than disarming an entire school and waiting for a shooter to come. It's not because of that. It's because you hate those kids and you don't care if they die. Really, if you watch Piers Morgan, my good friend Piers, that's what people, he'll say that. He'll say that it's because you don't care enough. If you cared enough, then you would just agree with him on gun policy. You see this with regard to the state of California as well. Jerry Brown, during the State address, he had this to say. This is an unbelievable quote. It's a quote. If you believe that California will continue to grow, as I do, based on what we have no idea, and that millions more people will be living in our state, then all of this stuff he was talking about spending, this is a wise investment. Those who believe that California is in decline will naturally shrink back from such a strenuous undertaking. I understand the feeling, but I don't share it because I know the state and the spirit of the people who choose to live here. Read the undercurrent of what he was saying. Everybody in this room thinks that Californians don't work, are stupid, are lazy, and that the state is in decline. And not only that, we care so little about the state that we don't want to make the necessary investments. Now we disagree about the direction of the state. We're bad. We know the direction of the state. If we would just buy into their program, boy, oh boy, it would be gumdrops and lollipops falling from the sky. But because we don't understand, because we don't care about the people of California, we are willing to victimize them. And this is how it is. When you go to a Thanksgiving dinner with your family, people look at you across the table, and they ask you why maybe you don't support gay marriage, why you voted for Prop 8, and the look that you get is you just shot their dog. Right? They look at you as though you are scum of the earth. Now, the way they do this, the way they're able to push this message is by dominating all of California's institutions. The right tends to think individually, the left thinks institutionally. We like to talk to folks on a one-on-one basis because inherently we're more individualistic than the left. The left doesn't like to see people as individuals, they like to see them as members of groups. If you're black, then you're a member of the black community. If you're Jewish, you're a member of the Jewish community. If you're a Republican Jew, then you're not. Right? If you're a black Republican, then you're not. You are not part of that broader community because if you were, then they wouldn't be able to say to all their friends that they defend all blacks, Jews, gays, etc. That's why they don't like, this is why they hate Jewish Republicans, black Republicans, gay Republicans. It gives the lie to everything that the left believes. The left believes itself deeply. This is how they justify to themselves at night the fact that so many black kids go to bed in poverty, go to bed hungry, go to bed uneducated because of their policies. The way they justify that is by saying, yes, but we care about black children and you don't. And by the fact that we care about black kids, that means if you disagree with us politically, it's because you don't care enough about black kids. So when they see a black Republican, somebody like Larry Elder, somebody like Ward Connolly, then what they immediately do is they say, oh, he can't really be black. Right? Sarah Palin, she's not really a woman. If she were really a woman, then she would support abortion. They have to excise that. It's anathema to them. They cannot understand how it's humanly possible to be a woman and a Republican, because that undercuts the very basis for how they feel about everything in life. They use that feeling to dominate all the institutions. Because we don't see people that way, because we understand that there are gay Republicans and gay Democrats, black Republicans and black Democrats, because we see people that way, we tend to try to talk to people on an individual level, on a one-to-one level. If you look at the left, they don't care about that. When was the last time you talked to somebody from the left who wanted to have an honest conversation about politics? They don't. Instead, what they do is they take over institutions, because they're very smart. So they take over the entire university infrastructure. Right? They take that university infrastructure and they make sure that they are indoctrinating your children and your grandchildren to make sure that they vote for Democrats. That is what they are doing, and they are doing it every single day. There's no doubt about it. I was on that campus, I wrote a book about this, I was at UCLA, they do this. There's a reason. When Jerry Brown was trying to drum up support for Prop 30, the first place he started, the very first place he started, was on all the campuses. Right? He went to the college campuses to talk to all of the stupid students who never pay taxes in their lives, and all of the professors who will never have to worry about having a real job, as Evan said, and who will also never really have to worry about the consequences of their philosophies, because they're all paid by the state. And the same thing, look, this isn't Nazi Germany, but the same thing happened with regard to Nazi Germany. If you look at the centers of power for the Nazi regime, it really started in the Nazi universities, because those universities were paid for by the state. Whenever you have groups that are paid for by the state, they're going to support the state. So universities support the state. You see in the media, too. The media is egregious. This is the real battle of our time, fighting the media. The media has no interest in the truth. These people are such brown-nosers as Democrats. They are on the verge of performing the first nasal colonoscopy. They are vile in the lies that they tell. Everything that they do is based on the premise that we are bad people, that we are bad human beings. When it came to whether California, for example, should adopt a state exchange under Obamacare, they ran all these articles about how wonderful it would be. Then, of course, as soon as we did it, front page LA Times, oh boy, this didn't cost a lot of money, ain't it? Well, yeah, that's what we were saying. But they weren't going to run that, because to run that would have been to treat us with respect. And they're not going to treat us with respect. So the question becomes, how do you fight all these folks? How do you fight them? And it's very difficult, because when they all get in a line and they start marching in lockstep, it's almost impossible to stop them. It's very, very difficult to stop them. You know, especially when you look at the kind of message that they're pushing, the Democratic Party is pushing, it's being echoed by the media, it's being echoed by Hollywood, which is another institution that is completely dominated by the left. When you go, you know, it's funny, when I talk to Republican crowds, Republicans need to understand, conservatives need to understand that Hollywood has a massive impact on how people think. And we tend not to pay any attention to it, because when we go home, we want to be entertained and we want to watch the same TV shows that everybody else wants to watch. Whenever I talk to conservatives in groups like this, I always ask how many people watch TV on a regular basis. And basically not a single hand goes up. No Republicans ever watch TV. Then of course they go home and watch Big Bang Theory. And then they're kind of surprised when it turns out that Hollywood is liberal. Of course Hollywood is liberal. This is what they do. So they've taken over all those institutions. The Democrats, what they do is, continue to paint us as bad guys. This all has a predictable effect. The reason this is important, the reason those bully tactics are important, is because, and the reason why California is uniquely important for Republicans, really uniquely and truly important for Republicans, is it is a bellwether state. Maybe national Republicans don't see it that way. Maybe national Republicans can see the state of California, and they say, oh, it doesn't matter anymore, it's all over here. Might as well just throw up your hands like Massachusetts and New York. The reason California is a bellwether, why do you think we're debating immigration reform right now? It's because California is a bellwether. There's a shifting demographic in this country. It's scaring the daylights out of a lot of conservatives. There is no reason that it should. But when you look at the state of California, what you've seen is various ethnic groups convinced, absolutely convinced, that Republicans are nasty human beings. Right? What does the Hispanic community hold in common? And again, Hispanic individuals. What do Hispanic individuals hold in common with the Democrats? Really, when it comes right down to it. The people who immigrate to this country, they want to work hard. They do. They want to get jobs. They want to be part of the society. They come here for the American dream. If they didn't, they would have stayed on the other side of the border. They come here to be part of this. And then they become Democrats. Why do you think they become Democrats? And why do you think it is that when you talk to folks, a lot of folks who are Hispanic, the first thing you have to do is you're put in the unwinnable situation of having to explain why you're not a racist. Why do you think that is? It's because Democrats and the media have been pushing the meme for so long that we are racist, bigots, sexist, homophobes, that we are put on the defensive all the time. You're seeing the Asian community, which is unthinkable. We're losing 70% of the Asian community. Mitt Romney lost 70% of Asians in the last election cycle in the state of California. That's a crazy number. That's a nutty number. So the question is, how do we fight back? So I said that a couple times. Here's how we fight back. The first way that we fight back is to define our opposition. Remember I started with the whole, how Mitt Romney defined Obama and how Obama defined Mitt Romney? These people are the real nasty ones. These people are the ones who are morally deficient. And I mean that very seriously. This is nothing to joke about. These folks are morally deficient. If you call someone a racist without evidence, if you call someone a sexist without evidence, if you use the worst slurs in American life to describe someone without evidence, you are a nasty, vile, bigoted human being. You are unworthy of debate. And that's what these folks are. It is not them, it's not their positions that make them so bad, it is their tactics that make them nasty. The fact that they have to define us as bad people, that's what makes them a bad person. I don't know how many people in the room saw the debate that I had with Piers Morgan on CNN over the But this is precisely what I did with Piers. When I first talked with him, the first thing I did right out of the gate, I said, Piers, you're a bully, and what you do is you stand on the graves of the kids of Sandy Hook to push your gun control agenda. And that was not me just throwing a name at him. That was an evidentiary statement based on watching his show. That's what he does. And he had no defense to that. Because here's the thing about the left. Everything they do is sleight of hand. Once you take the bully tactic away from them, they have nothing. Once they have to debate policy and explain why we need a $100 billion bullet train that goes from nowhere to nowhere, then they're in trouble. So what they would prefer to do is say that we're against progress, we're against the future, we're against the children. Once you say to them, you know what, that's really nasty. You're a nasty person. You're actually a bad person. I care about kids just the same as you do, and for you to imply that makes you a nasty human being. They don't know how to deal with that because it's true. It's not like when they call us racist, it's not like when they call us sexist. It is true, they're a bad person if they do that. So, we have to fight back by defining our opponents. Who are these people? These are the same people. These are big government bureaucrats who think that they can run our lives. These are people who want to bully us into living the way that they want. These are people who do not give a damn about the kids in the inner city who are getting a crappy education. They don't. They don't care about those kids. They care about the union payoffs they're going to get for paying off the unions to keep those schools in the dregs. These are folks... These are folks who don't care about your lives, and they don't share your values. In fact, they hate your values, because if you want to live as an individual, if you want to live the American dream, then you oppose them. Because their American dream is not your American dream. That's what we ought to be saying to these folks, and we ought to be saying it loud and proud every single day. And we'll get pilloried by the media. But you know what? That's what we ought to be saying to the media, too. The only reason that the media is allowed to get away with what they get away with is because we let them. The only reason that they are allowed to pretend that they have this patina of objectivity is because we allowed them to. Why is George Stephanopoulos, a Clinton hack, moderating a Republican debate? One time, a Republican went on George Stephanopoulos and opened up with this. You know, George, thanks so much for coming and for letting me come on. I really appreciate it. I'm so glad to be here. Before we start, I just want to point something out. You are in the Clinton war room. You take Obama talking points and you use them as your questions. Now, if I question the premises of what you're saying and the premises of your questions, that's not me being combative. That's me pointing out, I'm a conservative, you're a liberal, let's have an honest conversation. That would end George Stephanopoulos. It would be like throwing water on the Wicked Witch of the West. You would melt into the floor. The second point here, besides framing your opponent, we have to frame our opponent. To me, this is the key to the whole thing. The second point here is we have to frame the narrative. Now, we've allowed them to frame the narrative in the state of California. The narrative is, if you spend lots of money, you're compassionate. If you don't spend a lot of money, then you're mean. That's the narrative. Now, the way that you prevent that framing is by, number one, showing where they're spending a lot of money and where it's having no impact. First, you have to take off the table the fact that when they don't get to play the race, sex, bigot, homophobe card, you can actually get down to policy, and then you can frame the narrative. So when I was on Piers, one of the things that I did on gun control is I knew that the hole in his philosophy is that he pretends he likes the Second Amendment. Like most liberals, he doesn't care about the Second Amendment, he doesn't like the Second Amendment, he thinks the Second Amendment is misguided. So I took a copy of the Constitution out of my pocket and I handed it to Piers on the air. Because I wanted him to have to defend, why is it that you like the Second Amendment? And he couldn't. Right? I wanted him to operate in my universe, which happens to be the American universe, where we have a Constitution and a Second Amendment. He didn't like it. The left doesn't like it either. We have rights in this country. Make the left defend the Constitution. They can't because they hate it. The left dislikes the Constitution. It is an obstacle to what they want to do. And when you say to them you hate the Constitution, please, if you don't, please explain to me why there's a balance of powers. Explain to me the concept of federalism. Explain to me why you think the way you do. The left has no answer, because their philosophy is filled with holes. It's filled with holes, and that's point number 3. These are the 3 ways to defeat the left, really. If you use these 3 tactics, you can use it in any argument. Use these 3 things, and you will never lose a debate with the left. If you define them as a person, if you frame the narrative, and if you point out the holes in their philosophy. Pointing out the holes in their philosophy is super simple, because it's like Swiss cheese, their philosophy. They want it one way, but they want it another way, and they're not consistent at all. In any real way, the left they're all inconsistent. For example, they say we're the party of the rich. Did you watch the Oscars? How is it the Republican Party isn't using class warfare against Hollywood? Why are we bashing Hollywood? How about this? Next time Jerry Brown proposes a tax, we propose another tax. You know what the tax is? The tax is if you earn your money in less than 25 weeks a year, we take all of it. Right? They say that we're corrupted by corporations, corrupt, evil corporations. We got a lot of this during the Prop 30 debate. There was outside money coming in. We got it during Prop 8 too. All these evil corporations who are coming on. What do you think unions are? And what has a greater impact on our state, unions or corporations? Last I checked, corporations hire people. Everybody who's working, virtually everybody who's working in California, who's now working for the state, all 5 of us, those folks are working for a corporation. If you're working for a union, the union is making sure that you will be reliant on a pension that will not be there when you get there, and they will make sure that you are fired because your business can't afford you if you work in the private sector. And in the public sector, they'll bankrupt the state. And this is speaking of framing the narrative, this is one thing, I'm shocked that we've not done this before. The demographics in the state of California do not favor old white people. Right, they don't. Old white folks in the state of California are having less kids than Hispanics and black folks in the state of California. Which is fine, there's nothing wrong with that. It would be worthwhile pointing out to black and Hispanic folks that the people who are going to be supporting, who are going to be paying those rich union pensions, that's all of those young black and Hispanic folks. That's not going to be a lot of young white folks. It's going to be a lot of minorities. So when they side with the unions, They need to understand what they're siding with is the unions taxing them. Someone's going to have to foot this bill. And white folks aren't having enough kids to foot those bills. So this is going to hit everybody, and it's going to hit minorities especially hard. It's like the New York Times, end of the world, minorities and women hit hardest. When it comes to union pensions, right, minorities are going to be hit hardest. That is a fact. Now, there are a couple of other points that we need to make here when it comes to framing our opponents, fighting their narrative, and pointing out holes in their philosophy. We all need to recognize that we need to be on offensive all the time. We're on defensive too much of the time, not just in terms of tactics, but in terms of how we reach out to folks. The way that the Democrats have been so successful in Hispanic communities by saying, look at those Republicans, they don't even bother trying to learn Spanish. Right? They don't care about Spanish. And so here's the answer. Let's learn Spanish. Let's learn Swahili. Whatever it takes to give people the message of conservatism, go there and do it. If people... I mean, really, I don't speak a lot of Spanish, but the only line of Spanish I know here is todos necesitamos aprender español lo más pronto posible, right? Everybody should be learning Spanish as fast as possible. Not because Spanish is better than English, not for the sake of multiculturalism, which is idiocy and dilutes American values, not because of any of that, but because conservatism is universal and not language bound. They're running ads in the Hispanic community telling folks what nasty human beings we are, and we run ads in English, we are going to lose. If we want to win, there are certain things that we're going to have to do. We're going to have to play dirty, we're going to have to play even with them, and we are going to have to reach out to communities that we thought we lost 20 years ago. We can win them back, but they have to hear the message. They have to hear the message. And we can either sit on our hands pretending this ain't happening, and hoping that magically Linda is going to descend in a bubble and make California Republican again, or we can reach out to folks that we haven't before. And this is going to require something of every business person in this room. Your enemy is not the Democratic Party, it isn't. Your enemy is the government. Your enemy is the government of the state of California. If you think that your competitor is the Democratic Party, you're wrong. They want to restrict you. But your real enemy is the government going into all of these areas all over the state and hiring people and making them dependent on government. That is the Democrats' plan. That has always been the Democrats' plan. Get enough people dependent on government, and it won't matter what message you're trying to tell them. They will vote Democrat from now until kingdom come. Once they are government employees, they will stay government employees. So we have to recognize something. They own the education system, they own Hollywood, they own the media, and in this state they own government. So what do? So if you're a corporation, why not go into the inner cities and start a charter school, a private school, and give people discounted rates, and make sure that people are educated in that program, and then give them job opportunities. We have to be more active than we've ever been, because capitalism is under assault in this state like it has never been before. Capitalism is under complete assault in this state. They will fight to destroy it, and they will tell you that it doesn't work. And so we're going to have to be a lot more aggressive about recruiting people into capitalism. Right? Capitalism used to be the default. It ain't the default anymore. This is not a capitalist state. This is a corporatist state. This is a state where the government picks winners and losers and decides who wins and who loses and who votes how. The only way to fight that is to get much more active than we have ever been. But it all starts with fighting these bullets. In the end, we cannot win until we recognize who these people are. They are vile. They have no interest in what's best for the state of California. We need to be saying that. We need to be saying over and over, they don't have interest in what's good for the state of California. We don't have the same intentions. They want what's bad. Do they really not see what they've done to this state? Do they really not see what's happened to all of the children of this state who are getting less than average educations in math, in science, and reading? Do they really not see that businesses are fleeing on a daily basis? They're raising gas taxes again, and businesses are getting the hell out. Do they not see? And if we give them credit, you know what we're doing? We're legitimizing these folks. And they are not legitimate, they are illegitimate. When someone calls you a racist, and you say you're a rational, reasonable human being, you know what you're saying? You're saying, you know what, you're right, I'm a racist. Because follow the logic. If they call you a racist, and you say you're reasonable, what you are saying is that a reasonable person is calling you a racist. In other words, it is reasonable to call you a racist. In other words, you're a racist. These folks are not reasonable. They have never been reasonable. They are more unreasonable now than they have ever been in the past. And there's good news here. Now they have to own their record. They own it. They break it, they bought it, they own it. Okay? They built this. And now they get to defend it. And if we don't make them defend it and make them defend their intentions in implementing such a god-awful system, then we've failed in our fundamental duty not only to ourselves, not only to the state of California, but to the founding principles on which this country stands. There's only one way to defeat a bully. Everybody knows it. President Obama said it himself. Get punched back twice as hard. Thanks so much.
Geez, I'm 51, I haven't talked to you that way over. You know, the great thing about Ben being young and working in the industry he does and breaking out, it is inspirational to see. And look, you gotta be who you are. Not everybody can be Ben Shapiro, but everybody can feel better that there is a Ben Shapiro. Let's give him a round.